Senator Cruz, thanks so much for coming on. So what a major moment there from the Capitol that's happening there for Republicans. This announcement of a probe onto Hunter Biden, his business dealings, but also looking at the role that possibly the president, the former vice president, Joe Biden, had in this. Your thoughts, Ted Cruz?
Well, listen, I think it's very important that we finally have congressional oversight of the abuses of this administration. That's one of the most important consequences of Republicans taking the House. And Jim and James are both exactly correct that the focus needs to be on Joe Biden. You know, we've seen the Biden Department of Justice engage in abuses of power. I just wrote a book, came out a couple of weeks ago, called Justice Corrupted, How the Left has Weaponized the Legal System, that talks entirely about how Barack Obama and Joe Biden turned the Department of Justice and the FBI and the IRS into politicized and weaponized tools to target their enemies. And as you know, the Biden DOJ has been leaking that they're considering and intend to indict Hunter Biden. Let's be clear. That story is not about a poor, troubled soul who has substance abuse issues. That's what the DOJ is trying to make it about. They're saying, well, we're going to go after him on drug charges or tax charges, all of which are personal to Hunter Biden. The real issue and what the focus of congressional inquiry needs to be, and I'm glad to hear just moments ago that it will be, is on the official corruption, on the evidence that Joe Biden was part and parcel involved in official corruption. For example, we know that Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma, a Ukrainian natural gas company. He didn't speak a word of Ukrainian. He didn't know a damn thing about oil and gas, but they paid him $83,000 a month. And the only reason they paid him that was because Daddy was vice president, not just vice president, but Obama had put him in charge of Ukraine in particular. And the corrupt oligarch that owned the natural gas company was being investigated by Ukrainian prosecutors, and Joe Biden went to the head of Ukraine and said, you either fire the prosecutor or we're going to hold up $1 billion in U.S. aid. And as Joe Biden famously said in a televised interview, well, son of a bitch, they fired the guy. They fired the prosecutor investigating the corrupt oligarch who was paying Joe Biden's son $1 million a year. That's what he was being paid for. And so that needs to be investigated. And that doesn't even begin to touch the Chinese communist who paid millions to Hunter Biden with, as you know, the phrase 10% for the big guy. That is why it is a matter of public concern, not that he has substance abuse problems, but that his dad was on the take from enemies of America. That is worthy of investigation. I'm glad to see the House will be doing it.
Yeah. Let's talk about your chamber, sir, in Congress, the upper chamber, in the Senate here. Of course, Republicans, we learned yesterday, were able to take the majority in the House, but it's not the case in the Senate. There was a leadership vote yesterday for McConnell. Yeah. I know you voted against him, although he did maintain to his leadership status. But why'd you cast the vote against Mitch McConnell?
Well, listen, we've had over the last 2 days extended debate, about 8 hours of passionate debate within the Republican conference in the Senate. And I led the charge to say what we're doing isn't working. Listen, I am frustrated. I am pissed off at the election results from last week, and millions of Americans are as well. Given the national environment, given the disaster of Democrat policies, from inflation to crime to illegal immigration, we should have won an historic victory. We should have a significant majority in the Senate. We should have a massive majority in the House. Instead, the Democrats kept their Senate majority, and we have only a tiny majority in the House. And so I stood up at the conference and said, look, it's easy to blame others, but we need to ask what Senate Republicans could have done differently. And in particular, I believe we need to stand up and fight. So I made a motion to delay these leadership elections, delay them until after the Georgia runoff, so that Herschel Walker could have a voice and participate in this debate. And fundamentally, so our leadership could stand in front of us and explain, when do you intend to fight? Is there anything you intend to fight? Or does leadership intend to have 2 years of rolling over for Democrats, one after the other after the other? This was the first leadership battle we've had in 10 years. This hasn't happened in the Senate. At the end of the day, 16 Republicans voted with me to delay the election. That wasn't enough. We needed 25. And 10 Republicans voted against Mitch McConnell. That's the first time that has ever happened. And look, did leadership change their tune? Not entirely, but it was valuable to have the debate in the conference and to have other Republicans saying, for Pete's sakes, let's stand up and fight. Let's fight right now against the Biden administration firing soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines who are being fired by Joe Biden because they declined to get the COVID vaccine. That is an outrage. Let's fight against 87,000 new IRS agents being hired to harass and intimidate and persecute American citizens. Let's fight to secure the southern border. Let's fight to drive down the price of gasoline by unleashing American energy dominance. All of those are fights worth fighting. And the last 2 days, we had a knockdown, drag-out battle over exactly that.
Let me just add this. Senator Hawley somewhat agreeing with what you're saying there, saying the Republican Party is dead. There needs to be something new. I've got about a minute left with you, so I did want to get your thoughts on this. The Georgia runoff is happening there. Warnock-Walker, that's a big one, December 6th. The former president, Donald Trump, announced that he is running in 2024. My thoughts, your thoughts rather, on him announcing it before this runoff. Is that the right time for that? And your aspirations as well. We watched your run there in 2016. Is a 2024 bid something you're looking into, or a possible ticket, vice president ticket? Your thoughts on that?
Well, listen, I am focused very much on the United States Senate and standing up and fighting the disastrous policies from Joe Biden and the Democrats that are hurting the American people. The Herschel Walker race is incredibly important. I came down there. Herschel called and asked me to come down on Thursday, 2 days after the election. We did the first big rally, had over 3,000 people come out supporting Herschel Walker. It was an incredible rally. This election, this runoff election, is December 6th. It is pivotally important. And I am all in for Herschel Walker. I think it is incredibly important for anyone in Georgia to support Herschel Walker, because if the Democrats win in Georgia, they will be just one vote away from ending the filibuster in the United States Senate and from being able to adopt policies to permanently damage democracy. Things like a federal takeover of elections, striking down election integrity laws, things like adding new states to have new Democrat senators, things like packing the U.S. Supreme Court, adding 4 left-wing justices. All of those could be enabled by a Democrat victory in Georgia. And so Herschel needs to win. I'm all in on focused on winning that race. And I think it's the most important battle in the country right now.
Of course, we can't ignore the announcement from the former president and his 2024 bid. Do you support Donald Trump's announcement and his intent to be the Republican ticket?
Well, listen, I think we accomplished an enormous amount when Donald Trump was president. I worked hand in hand with him every day. I was Trump's strongest ally in the United States Senate. If he's the nominee, I will enthusiastically support his candidacy. But I think right now the battle I'm focused on is Georgia, December 6th, because it is coming up in just a couple of weeks, and the stakes are enormous. There's going to be plenty of time to focus on 2024. I'm focused on the battle that's just a couple of weeks ahead of us.
We appreciate you taking the time, Senator. Senator Ted Cruz there of Texas, joining us live from the Capitol. Thank you, Senator.